podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Some of the topics are addiction, fear, faith, self-compassion, relationships, codependency, emotional intelligence, and more. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
If you are suffering from codependency, you're not alone. Codependency is widespread in our world today, and learning to acknowledge how we entangle, enable, attach, and cling to others in unhealthy ways allows us to eventually learn to reclaim our personal self-worth, says Lisa A. Romano. In this episode, Lisa talks about narcissism, codependency, and how to return to our true selves. Lisa A. Romano is a certified life coach and best-selling author, as well as a popular YouTube vlogger. She's also the creator of the 12-week breakthrough coaching program and the Master Your Reality coaching program. Lisa is known as an expert in the field of codependency and narcissistic abuse. She believes what is wrong, it's not us, it is only our programming. Lisa believes understanding the self is the key to liberating the self. Her books include The Road Back to Me, My Road Beyond the Codependent Divorce, Loving the Self Affirmations, Codependent, Now What? And Quantum Tools to help you heal your life now. Here's the interview with Lisa A. Romano. In your own words, who is Lisa A. Romano?
Lisa A. Romano is somebody that believes that it is important that people understand how their childhoods have affected them. It's important that people understand that there is love and light within them, but that the idea that the world is, we are conscious and unconscious at the same time, can impact our ability to find that light. And so I'm somebody that believes that through uncovering my childhood programming and facing my codependency and figuring out what I could do to change what was wrong with me, that was really at the core of why I was living such an unsatisfactory life. I realized that there was light inside of me, but I had been programmed to believe that I was bad and I was not good enough. And I'm somebody now that wants to teach people to believe in that light. And I also want to teach them how to find that light. Because when you find the light inside of you, you not only change your world, but you change the world.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. Do you agree that the idea that both narcissists and those who become their targets navigate the world through the lens of a false self?
I'm not so sure it's a false self for the empath. I think if we're talking about a codependent, who is highly empathic, that might be the case. But an empath is highly intuitive, highly sensitive, and is can be drawn in by somebody else. They want to help. They want to rescue people. And they might even pick up on the core shame of the narcissist and might think all this narcissist needs is to be loved. In the case of a codependent, in my humble opinion, codependents they have the same core wound. They're shame based and they're out of focused. And empaths can be out of focused. And narcissists are self-focused. So an empath and a codependent can become the perfect target for somebody who is self-focused, because codependents and empaths both are other-focused. So empaths can pick up on the needs of other people and can tend to want to fix other people like codependents can, but I don't think all empaths are shame-based. I think some empaths are just highly intuitive and they're picking up on the wounds of other people, and it's hard for them to create borders and boundaries around these wounds. And it's easy for them to pick up on, like I said, the needs of others, and in that space, they're unable to protect themselves from narcissistic others. I don't know. I hope that made sense.
Yes, it does. So in a way, you're separating codependence and empath.
Yeah.
They're not exactly the same.
There's some people that don't even think that the term empath is a true term. They don't believe that that's even a true term. I think that it's possible to be born highly, highly intuitive and highly, highly empathic, and not know. Like, if you think about, like, I've read stories about psychic mediums that were their whole life they had panic disorder or anxiety attacks, and they were picking up on the energies of other people, but they didn't know that they were psychic. So I would think that, like, psychics are highly empathic. A codependent is different. You can have a highly intuitive codependent, but codependents have also suffered attachment trauma and they don't feel good enough. And in the taking care of other people and being validated through the taking care of someone else, they're finding their sense of self-worth. Unfortunately, our narcissist will exploit that and will demand that a codependent who is shame-based take care of them.
Yes. Do you feel like being a codependent is a problem?
Yes. Being a codependent is absolutely a problem, because when you're suffering from the codependent mind, you don't have a healthy sense of self. You are outer focused. You tend to people please. You lack boundaries. Like I said, you're shame-based. You don't feel good enough. You're a doer. You're constantly doing and doing and doing and doing and anticipating the needs of others. And you could be increasingly secretly resentful because you don't have the life skills to set a boundary with somebody. It's not healthy to be codependent.
Right. But the way I see it, I don't think we can become independent from one another. We are deeply connected, all of us.
I think it's important that we become interdependent, meaning, in other words, like, a codependent's entire world revolves around other people and they lack a sense of self, which is not independence, right? And so healthy people, they have independence, but they're choosing to love or engage or to nurture another person who is also independent and respectful, and is able to reciprocate love and empathy in return. Codependents attract people who do not reciprocate.
They are causing their own suffering or deepen their suffering.
They're acting it out. We're all programmed and we all recreate our childhood wounds because we're all unconscious. And in my opinion, the world is holographic. And so if my mother was codependent and I observed her cater to my father, who is highly narcissistic, that becomes a pattern of behavior. This becomes my norm, to cater to people, to anticipate their needs, to put myself last. This becomes my norm. And I am actually recreating, because I'm also unconscious, I'm recreating these patterns, and I am extremely lonely. I continue to attract people that need to be taken care of, that need constant validation, that need to have me mirror back to them how awesome they are, even though I don't get any healthy mirroring back to me. So yes, you're in the midst and recreating your own suffering.
It makes sense. Is a narcissist also a codependent?
I think narcissists are codependent. Absolutely. They can't, a narcissist, could never, you ever hear of a one-man show? Like, so sometimes you go to a show and it's one person on stage and they do the entire show. It's a one-man show.
Oh, yeah.
Narcissists can't live in solitary. They need other people to mirror back to them this false self. So they are codependent. But when I say, when we're talking about codependency and we're trying to identify a codependent from a narcissist, then the codependent is catering to the needs of the other, whereas a narcissist is also codependent but needs to be catered to.
Yeah, to himself, herself. Right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it makes sense too. How does the false self of a narcissist develop?
Well, a narcissist is an extremely, extremely, extremely wounded adult. Mm. They have been demoralized. They feel devalued. And they have decided that the world is a very unsafe place very early on. And they're so far removed from their true self. So the false self is like a buffer between them and their true self, which they see on some level is very weak and very vulnerable, and those are all bad things. So they develop this false self, this grandiose, confident, bigger than life false self that they want you to believe in, and they want to believe in, so they never have to ever touch that space inside of them that feels vulnerable.
What is the difference between a narcissist, sociopath, and a psychopath? Well,
all psychopaths are narcissists, but not all narcissists are psychopaths, which is interesting. And psychopaths, the general consensus is that psychopaths are born, that there are brain issues. Like a psychopath's brain is different than a sociopath's and a narcissist. So a psychopath, the area of the amygdala, their brain, the area of their brain that is very sensitive to pleasure, is overly stimulated, but the area of the brain that is related to emotions is undersensitive. And so psychopaths don't react to emotions the way a healthy person would. Their brain just doesn't register. So you can scan the brain of a psychopath and ask them to read the word cancer and then read the word book, and they'll have the same emotional reaction to both. So words mean nothing. So that's why you can beg for your life to a psychopath and they'll kill you anyway, and then go have a sandwich. So they can't form healthy bonds with people, where sociopaths can form bonds with people, but very rarely. Sociopaths they don't have the self-control a psychopath has. So a psychopath has control. They're all manipulative, which is really interesting. But psychopaths have no conscience. A sociopath can feel bad about doing something, but they'll do it anyway. So sociopaths, it's said that they can be conditioned into antisocial behavior as a way of life. So if you think of a child who, let's say a foster child, I don't mean to stigmatize anyone, but just say a child that has been placed into this extremely violent home, and has a criminal for a foster parent, this child wasn't born into this criminality, but taking advantage of people becomes a way to survive, right? Narcissists they can also have empathy, but they lack empathy to the degree of a healthy person. And a narcissist can actually feel remorse, but the moment they feel remorse, they'll turn it around and blame you. They won't really go too deep into taking responsibility for why they're doing something. I'm trying to think of what are the differences. So, I hope that makes sense to you.
Yes, yeah. How can we distinguish the personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, from self-confidence, from healthy narcissism?
So narcissism is essential. Healthy narcissism is essential. You want to raise a child with healthy narcissism, a child that has an I, right? A child that knows who they are, a child that can set goals and loves themselves so much that they're going to wake up every day and they're going to set goals and they're going to achieve those goals. But we can have somebody on the extreme end of the spectrum with narcissistic personality disorder, and this gets completely turned on its head. So somebody who is let's say self-confident, they can be self-confident and have empathy for others, right? Somebody with self-confidence and healthy narcissism can feel remorse. They can engage and they can also change. So if you have a friend who you think is self-centered or has some narcissistic traits, but who's not narcissistic, doesn't have the disorder, you can say to her, listen, Maria, when you did that, I felt minimized. And Maria can be self-reflective and say, I'm so sorry, and she can change. But a narcissist, somebody that is on the spectrum, on the other end of the spectrum, will feel enraged if you question them. They'll lash out if you dare suggest that they've done anything wrong. A narcissist will exploit you. If you do not reflect back to them the false self that they need for you to reflect back. So narcissists generally don't change. They lack empathy, whereas somebody who has healthy narcissism or is even self-centered, they can have empathy and they can change. And their agenda is not to persecute you if you don't do what they want you to do. They're not out there. They don't feel entitled either. A narcissist will exploit you. They feel entitled to exploit you, and they lack empathy for sure. And that's just not the case with somebody with healthy narcissism.
Right. Wow. Do you think it's possible a relationship between somebody who has a disorder and somebody who is a compassionate person? Mm-hmm. So in a way, that compassionate person is giving her, what they need. It's not falsehood. They are being honest. They're loving them beyond their problems with their disorder.
I honestly, if we're talking about narcissistic personality disorder, unless that person is in treatment with a trauma specialist or a psychotherapist that knows that they're treating the disorder, and unless the person with the disorder is actively working on themselves, I think that a compassionate person, it's fine to have compassion for somebody who has this disorder, but somebody with this disorder is unable to have compassion for the person with compassion. And so the problem is that, and narcissistic personality disorder, if you think of it as a tree, right? And if you think about compassion and adoration, and empathy as water to these roots, you are just fueling this disorder. That's the problem. And so, very oftentimes, the what helps a person with narcissistic personality disorder is not tolerating this type of behavior. It's by, not engaging. It's by saying a boundary, detaching and saying, I care about you and I see why you are this way, but I can't engage with you because relationships should be 50-50. I should be able to feel seen, and I should not be afraid that the minute I don't adore you or the minute I don't have compassion for you, you're going to persecute me. I shouldn't have to live that way. I think it's great to have compassion for people, even compassion for narcissists, but, from a distance.
So I think what you're saying is that compassion cannot solve the problem. A lot of times we think that compassion and love can perform miracles, could change the world and change people, but you're saying that's not really the case.
Well, if we're talking about pathological narcissism, no. If we're talking about psychopathic narcissism, no. If we're adding love and compassion to the equation, and this person that we love is a narcissist and they acknowledge I have a problem, and they are actively seeking treatment, I think that's awesome. But, pouring compassion on someone and in this case, you're just fueling their false self.
Yes. Yeah. That makes sense. That would be the dark side of compassion. I have heard about that. Yeah. You wrote, narcissistic abuse hurts like no other pain. This is because narcissists know they have to gain access to your heart in order to cripple you from the inside out.
Right.
Do you think that narcissists actually plan to act the way they do, or their behavior sort of unfolds from their inability to understand themselves and their issues?
I think if we're talking about a psychopathic narcissist, I think that they can actually plan it, which is really scary.
Yes.
Really scary. I dated somebody who sought me out and, learned everything he could about me. And he had 7 other women that he was doing this to, at least. And so that was planned, that was premeditated. But I think that the garden variety narcissist, somebody who is not aware that they have these core issues of shame, I don't think so. I think that you worded it beautifully, that this behavior unfolds. They're very good at reading people's vulnerabilities. They're very good at understanding on some level, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that if I can figure out what that person's vulnerabilities are, I can use them against them. I can exploit them, and I can stay in a dominant role. Narcissism is about dominance, and so, whether it's conscious or unconscious, I think this is not a black and white issue. I think for some it might be, but I think for most people who are on the spectrum, I don't think it's conscious, which is scary, because when you have a conversation with them and you say, listen, you love bombed me when I met you. You were so attentive. You pretended to care about the same things that I cared about. 6 months later, you don't care about those things at all. And then in the narcissist's mind, they can't conceive that this could possibly be true of them, right? So you're seeing the real side of them, and they don't want that. So they're actually convicted, and they believe that you're crazy. And that's one of the things that I find so maddening about dealing with somebody on the spectrum, because they're so convinced that they're not this way, that this is just your weird version of them.
Right. So you said that they cannot change unless they sort of acknowledge their personality disorder and they seek treatment,
Yes.
that. But are they aware? What is the level of awareness of their behavior?
I don't know. I think, and like I said, I think that, the word narcissist, it gets thrown around a lot, and I think that we have to be really, really careful about that. I think that we have to understand that healthy narcissism is good. So that means, we have to be careful about who we label a narcissist. Just because someone disagrees with us doesn't mean that they're a narcissist, right? So, but we're looking for certain markers: somebody who feels entitled, somebody who, lacks empathy for you, for other people, somebody who tends to think that they're always right, they're never wrong, somebody who lies, somebody who is emotionally manipulative. And this is a consistent behavior. It's something that we have to really be aware of. And so in terms of their level of awareness, narcissists are not aware that they're narcissists. Remember that they have developed a false self. And this false self is intelligent. This false self is respectable. this false self it could be even a martyr. This false self could be altruistic in nature. They can really see themselves as saviors. There are plenty of preachers, who are narcissistic. There are plenty of priests, who are narcissistic, and rabbis who are narcissistic. And so it's important that we recognize that a narcissist does not see themselves as a narcissist. That's why, knowledge is so important, and educating people is so important, and not for the sake of pointing the finger and saying, that person's a narcissist. It's so that you can become socially aware of predator-like personalities so that you can avoid them. So that you can become disentangled from somebody who is emotionally and psychologically manipulative. It's important that we recognize that these types of people do exist. So we're looking for patterns of behavior, and we're also looking to pay attention to how we feel when we're engaging this person. If we feel invisible, if we feel unheard, if we feel manipulated, if we feel like we have brain fog, like we're confused, you're not supposed to feel confused in a loving relationship.
Right.
There's supposed to be, flow. This is supposed to be a reciprocal, respectful relationship that's mutually satisfying, that grows, that doesn't feel stuck and stagnant. You're not supposed to be crying every other day. It's not supposed to be high highs and low lows. It's supposed to be pretty consistent.
What about a relationship between two narcissists? Would that kind of relationship survive?
So psychopaths are generally people with antisocial personality disorder, let's say, or under that umbrella. Psychopaths are the ones that have trouble with emotions, where narcissists do feel. They do feel, and they're triggered very easily. But what they lack is empathy for the other person. And so, but here's the thing, as long as narcissists are both feeding their own narcissism, so you think about a really, really Adonis-like gorgeous guy, and a really ridiculous female goddess, right? And when they look at each other, I'm just saying in terms of if we're talking about narcissistic people now. So the really, really gorgeous guy is in this relationship with this girl because she's gorgeous and it makes him look good. And this really, really gorgeous female is in this relationship with this really, really gorgeous guy because it makes her look good, right? So they're feeding off of each other. But the minute the one no longer serves the other, the relationship is over.
They wouldn't have the tolerance because they're not empathetic, like you said. They lack empathy.
Yeah, they lack empathy for one another. If you're talking about two narcissists, the female, let's say we're talking about in this situation, the female narcissist is not with this guy because she loves him. She's in this relationship because of how she believes being with this guy reflects onto her false self. Look how wonderful I am. I'm so beautiful. See how beautiful I am. I'm able to attract this type of a man. So, and as long as he feels the same way, they'll have a relationship, but it won't be built on anything that's meaningful.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So let's say the girl gains 30 pounds, relationship's over.
Wow.
Let's say the guy, begins to feel insecure, and loses a job, and he needs to lean on her emotionally. Relationship's over.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Now we're bringing two, I don't like the word diseased, but I would say two people, ill together. Mm-hmm. We can't get anything healthy out of that.
No.
What kind of love do you think a narcissist can offer?
I think that, narcissists, to me, language can get us in trouble. Words can get us in trouble. So when I say, and my husband and I have had this discussion so many times, when I say love, I mean, I love you unconditionally, meaning that, I love you as you are. I don't expect you to change, but I've also chosen you, and you and I have very similar core values. So it's easy to love you, right? So I'm not going to be with somebody who is difficult to love. I'm not going to be with somebody whose core values are not in alignment with mine. It's a very difficult relationship, right? Doesn't mean I can't love somebody who's got different values. It just means in terms of a partnership, I'm probably going to do better with somebody who has similar core values, who sees the world similarly to me. Now, that is the situation with my husband and I, but we're not exactly the same. There are things that he believes that I don't believe, and I don't expect him to change that, right? But I do have boundaries. So if he or I did something that violated our core beliefs, both of us know that we wouldn't tolerate that. No matter how much we love that person, we love ourselves, and we wouldn't be with somebody who deceived us. We wouldn't be with somebody who violated our true core values. Somebody that went out and hurt an animal. Like, I can't be with somebody who's hurting animals, or I can't be with somebody who's stealing from people. I can't be with somebody who can rationalize really like antisocial behavior. I can love that person, but I don't necessarily have to be with that person. Now, when it comes to a narcissist, this is just my opinion. I think that they can love, but I think it's a different type of love. And I think that narcissists can love you, but only if you continue to supply them with a narcissistic supply. So, like we use the example between the really gorgeous female, and the gorgeous male. A narcissist will love you as long as they're getting something in return, as long as there's a payoff, right? So they can love you. But the minute this payoff is no more, or you begin to need them, then a narcissist cannot love you.
Right. You're saying that the love of a narcissist is conditioned.
Absolutely. You have to play their game, their way, and then they'll tolerate you. Then they'll love you. You play by their rules. You understand that they make the rules. You don't give them a hard time. You don't question them. You don't raise your voice to them. You don't, question what they do with their money. They can question you, but you can't question them. You have to acquiesce to them. And as long as you play, you're a good girl or you're a good boy, then they'll love you.
You mentioned unconditional love. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that's really possible between two human beings?
I think, and this is the thing, I think that you can unconditionally love somebody, right? And in terms of, you can unconditionally love anybody. You can unconditionally love a psychopath, but then we have to define, what does love mean to you? I can love somebody from afar and send them love and send them light and not expect them to change, and understand that I'm not here to alter this person's soul's evolution, that even a psychopath has come to evolve their soul, and I don't have to get involved with that. And I can still love them and wish them well. Some people think that, when I say I love somebody, that means that I am in a relationship with that person. I think that we can be unconditionally loving, but we have to be realistic. Am I going to unconditionally love somebody who punches me in the face every Sunday? Am I going to tolerate that abuse? I have to be unconditionally loving to myself first. So unconditional love, I think the purest form of unconditional love is the love that we give the self. In terms of, loving other people, I think that we can be unconditionally loving, but I don't think it's possible to be that way without boundaries, without knowing where our limits are. Because I can unconditionally love someone, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to allow them into my home, feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, allow them to steal from my pocketbook, allow them to steal from my daughters, allow them to abuse me, allow them to abuse my husband. I'm not going to allow that.
Right. That is my next question about establishing the boundaries. If you work with one, or you have to live with one, it's your father, your mother, what advice would you give?
I think it's important that, if you think that you're dealing with somebody who is a narcissist, first of all, it's, just acknowledging that's so heavy. It is so difficult to deal with somebody who's narcissistic because it goes against nature, meaning that we all come here to bond. We all come here to experience empathy for one another. And you're just never going to get that with a narcissist. So, just acknowledging that it is absolutely exhausting to have to deal with and work with and co-parent, or be the child of a narcissist, just first off acknowledge that it's a difficult burden. Know that it's going to be challenging. And then the first thing that I would say is it's really important that we detach. It's really, really important that the first thing that we do is that we understand that detaching from the narcissist emotionally, disengaging is very important. Don't answer any personal questions with the narcissist. This is you defining a boundary. Remember what I said earlier, narcissists, if you think of a narcissist as a giant tree and think about their root system, they need water, they need certain minerals. And the more you supply that tree with adoration and love and this false sense of self, like as long as you mirror it back, this tree is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's important that you understand that one of the best things that you can do is disengage. So, I'm sure you've heard of the gray rock method. So you act disinterested, right? So it's like you stop watering the soil. You become unresponsive, almost catatonic, like completely like, okay, whatever, to everything that they say. You have minimal dialogue. So they ask you, how's your day? You say it was fine, and you don't divulge any personal information, right? Very important that you try to give them like one-word answers. The answers should be dull. Don't ask them questions. Don't ask them about their day. Don't ask them why. And do not be defensive, because the more drama you bring to a relationship with the narcissist, let's say you work in an office with a narcissist, you want to disengage, you want to not roll your eyes, you want to not challenge them, don't make a big deal that you think this person is a narcissist. Don't tell anybody you think this person's a narcissist. Do what you can to pull your energy from the relationship. See if you can get moved to the other side of the office or even get moved around in the company. Do what you can to disengage, right? And also if you have to co-parent with the narcissist, then don't talk to them unless you have to, right? If they're dropping the kids off from, let's say, visitation, don't get in the car and talk to him or her. Don't call them during the week. Stick to the facts. Only talk to them about facts. Johnny has a play on Friday at 4. The tickets are in your mailbox. That's it. Goodbye. You don't have to have any other conversation. But I say the most important thing is to disengage. And then also, if you can have compassion, right? Being that you brought it up before. For me, when I realized what was really going on with my ex-husband, I ended up being able to detach and disengage. And I was able to see that he was a very wounded person. And he was afraid of being abandoned, severely afraid of being abandoned. And when I asked for a divorce, that triggered him. And how dare I want to divorce him? And he needed to punish me for that. So when I began to have compassion for why he was the way he was, and at the same time put distance between me and him, that helped me not take things so personally.
Which I can imagine was really a hard thing to do for you.
Oh, for
being
sure.
Empathetic, sensitive.
It was very difficult. I think the most difficult part was not knowing what I was dealing with, and even not acknowledging that I was codependent and that I was stuck in this dynamic seeking his validation and his permission. Codependents don't feel like they have a right to feel their feelings, and they look to the outside world to say, yes, Lisa, you're unhappy and you have a right to be unhappy. I didn't have a healthy sense of self. I had no self-esteem. I didn't know how to acknowledge my own emotions because I was taught to invalidate my emotions, which made me a perfect, prey for somebody who could tap into those vulnerabilities and exploit them for their own need for dominance over another person, which is what happened.
Wow. I also can imagine how hard it is for children of narcissists, because the connection, we crave connection, and that is really hard to disengage how you proposed, and especially detach emotionally too.
Oh, yes. I think that, it's very difficult when you may realize that And I see it in my coaching program. So we have, codependents who are married to a criminal, a narcissistic person who is also a criminal. So maybe had sociopathic tendencies and who was highly, highly abusive to his children and may have even manipulated the court system and gotten custody of the children and abused them terribly. Now the children, developed a false sense of self, and in extreme cases, we have children who have been so abused by sociopathic or psychopathic parents or narcissistic parents that they have to develop a false self. And now to be the parent, the other parent who is seeing this dynamic, play out, it is absolutely devastating. Absolutely devastating. And so you're right. It's an awful experience, and we can only hope to help break the cycle. And codependents are willing to be self-reflective and say, what's wrong with me so I can fix it? And they are the hope in that family system to seek the light within and to shift the dynamic for future generations.
Yes, I agree. Going back to one point from the beginning of our conversation and about empaths also navigating the world through the lens of their false self. And you said you're not sure about it. Why you're not sure about the false self that empaths, they also embrace?
Well, because, and I mean, this is just my opinion. I could be wrong. But, my understanding of empaths is that they're highly sensitive. They can lack boundaries. They have a deep sense of wanting to help the world and help others. But I'm not so sure that all empaths are coming from a wounded place, right? Where they had to create a false self to survive. I believe it's possible to be born highly, highly empathic and to not be coming from such a wounded place. Then there may be empaths that are coming from a very wounded place. And in fact, that's a really good question. And again, I don't like to see the world in black and white. I believe that there's a lot of gray, and it's possible that, anyone who considers themselves an empath, could have been born highly sensitive, and also because of their sensitivity could have been abused, and, bullied. And that could also increase your empathy, your ability to have, to feel other people's feelings and actually increase your sensitivity to others. I just, if you're asking me my personal opinion, I'm not so sure that all empaths, again, I don't like to speak in black and white. I'm not so sure that all empaths are coming from a false self, that it might be their true self is this highly empathic person that needs to learn how to set boundaries and needs to learn how to hold on to their own energy rather than absorbing the energy of other people.
Yes, I agree. Nowadays, from the understanding I have of empathy and compassion, I believe that being compassionate, it's a better space to be, like mentally, emotionally, because compassion has to do with suffering as well, but suffering with others, but creating this space of healing. So that we don't connect with people deeply emotionally, so we can get lost and become disabled, so we can't do anything about the situation. We know exactly what's happening, and we are able still to think about ideas of how to help them. I think this thing about I need to be loved, this is what the narcissists, they target us for. Do you sort of see what I'm trying to say about being an empathetic person and a compassionate person? The difference?
I think empathy in the purest form means that I'm not adding to or taking away from someone else's situation. It just means that I can have compassion for what they're going through, but I'm not going to make it about me and try to fix it. I'm just going to hold this space for this person. Let's say someone's dog dies, right? I'm just going to hold that space and say, you know what, I can see that you're suffering and I can see that this hurt you. And I'm just going to share this space with you. I'm just going to share this space with you. I'm not going to try to take your pain away. I'm not going to try to fix it. I'm just going to share this space with you. And in terms of, how do we become people who are no longer needy? I mean, if you're a needy person, you are prey. Because a psychopath, a sociopath, and a person on the end of the spectrum who has narcissistic personality disorder. So people who fall under the umbrella of antisocial personality disorder, they're very receptive and they can smell neediness out. And they will make you feel seen, and they will make you feel heard, and they will make you feel understood for the purpose of pulling you in so that they can learn what your vulnerabilities are and exploit them later, right? So it's very, very important. I believe that the most important thing that we can do is love ourselves and to have compassion and empathy for ourselves, so that we feel so full of self-love and self-compassion that we can get past the emotional mind and get to the rational mind. And when dealing with people, we can make rational choices about the people that we're loving or having sex with or having dinner with, right? It's not coming from the emotional, needy amygdala. It's coming from the irrational mind. I love myself, and I want to know if this person is actually friend or foe. And I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to look for patterns and consistency, and I'm not going to ignore red flags.
Yes, I love that, Lisa, about self-knowledge, self-examination, being open to just know yourself better. You wrote, the commitment to healing the wounds that cause us to feel spiritually starved for love to the point of craving love from the outside can lead us to recovery if we believe we are disciplined enough for the self-study. So how do you help those who believe they are disciplined enough to commit to healing those wounds?
So, I mean, I do that in a couple of ways. The most hands-on ways is through one-to-one coaching, and I help people learn to identify patterns, and I help people find compassion for themselves, because codependents have never, not never, but codependents have very neglected emotional attunement. So they've been abandoned in childhood emotionally or physically. They haven't had healthy mirroring. So they don't know what it feels like to have somebody mirror back a healthy sense of self, like a healthy sense of worth. And so what I help people do is I help people develop empathy for this wounded inner child that has been so abandoned. And through having compassion for their experience, they're able to heal shame. Because a lot of us feel, and we don't even realize it, but a lot of us feel like I'm not enough. But on a very innate level, we've also assigned blame for not feeling enough. So I think the worst ill that can fall upon somebody is for them to, a couple of things, think that God is outside of them instead of inside of them. But also this idea that we are not enough and it's our fault that we're not enough, which is shame, right? So there's something innately wrong with me. And that's why my mother treated me that way, or that's why my father treated me that way, because there's something wrong with me. And so what I do is I help people through my 12-week breakthrough coaching program and through one-to-one coaching, and even through I also have a membership site. So these are all vehicles in which I help people develop compassion for the inner child. I teach them how to validate the inner child. I help them how to heal, show them how to stay in their bodies while they're experiencing the shame, so they can transcend the shame. And then I teach them life skills. So it really is a process. First, we have to identify what's wrong, because if you don't know what's wrong, you can't fix it. So we identify what's wrong, we identify the why, we identify the what and the who, and then we move towards the how can we fix this? Because if you don't have life skills, if you don't know how to set a boundary, you're never going to be able to set a boundary. If you don't know how to process a difficult emotion without the need to dissociate, you're not going to be able to process those emotions and to move from the amygdala and the hippocampus to the prefrontal lobe, where you can make, it's the rational mind, where you can make a decision about how you feel. Very oftentimes, codependents are reactive. So they have a feeling and they're impulsive and they react to that feeling. Maybe it's they go down the rabbit hole and they're experiencing shame. And so we identify the who, the what, and then we develop how, we develop life skills. And I teach people how to, it's really the path towards enlightenment, really, because codependency is living in the dark. And, healing from codependency and narcissistic abuse is really a journey towards self-love, self-recovery, self-accountability, self-compassion, self-reliance, and enlightenment, which is pretty cool.
Yes, it is. I love listening to those who are genuine and they come from the heart. And I thank you for that.
Sure.
What positive things have you learned from your relationship with a narcissist?
Oh, boy. Well, the number one thing was I learned that it was me, meaning that, I live my life. If my life was a boat, I had so many holes in the boat, but I didn't know it. And, dealing with narcissists and the last man that I dated, what I believe was a psychopath, like in every sense of the word, extremely intelligent, bright, calculating, manipulative. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had a criminal record, which I didn't know, very good liar, all of that. That scared me because I introduced him to my children. And when I realized that I had ignored red flags and it came to light how bad this relationship really was, it was so mortifying and it was so humiliating, but it brought me to my knees, right? And it made me look at myself, because when I thought about the last 3 men that I dated, they all had similar traits, but they were getting worse as I was going on. And I realized I was the common denominator. And so it made me really stop and look at myself and get what are you doing wrong? And what I was doing wrong was I was ignoring red flags. I was ignoring the red flags. I was hanging on. I was coming from a place where I was dishonoring this guidance. And the last person I dated taught me to never do that again.
That falls into self-knowledge.
Yes, it was the ability to be truly, truly like naked with myself. Like, look at yourself. Look at what you're doing, your flaws. Look at all of it, Lisa. Don't look at some of it. Look for all of it. What are you doing wrong here? Because there's a pattern in you that is attracting this, and you're the common denominator. And so the humility, it really made me really, really look at myself. And it also, the positive thing that came out of it was, again, humility is beautiful because it allowed me to look at myself in an entirely new way. I had self-compassion for the young woman who was taught to disown her feelings and who was taught to cling rather than let go. I had compassion for her. It also taught me to love myself first before I loved anyone else.
Right. The way you just spoke now sort of made me think about addiction. Do you think that codependency is a kind of addiction?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. You're addicted. You can become addicted to people. You can become addicted to the cycle. You can become addicted to the need to be needed, right? Codependents need to be needed. And so I absolutely believe that codependency can be an addictive cycle.
Thank you. What are 3 things about life you know for sure?
I know that we're all enough. I know that the human spirit is enough. I know that, in certain situations when it comes to genetics, and we're talking about the brain, that some people are born with, a brain that doesn't work well. And that's unfortunate, but I do believe that all people are enough. I know for sure that it is possible to awaken. It is possible to heal from trauma from childhood. And I know for sure that if you love yourself, you love yourself, you truly love yourself, then you accept that you're not perfect. You accept that you're going to make mistakes. You accept that people have a right to their own opinion of you, even if it's wrong. You know, if you really, really love yourself, that you can be happy and you can define your life on your own terms, and it will not be dependent on other people. But you really, really have to absolutely love yourself.
Being enough, that was the first one. And then you also mentioned people who have been born with disorders like psychopathy and narcissistic disorders. Do you think there's a reason for that to be? They have a purpose in the world as well?
Well, I think that in terms of, you know, when we're talking about psychopaths who are born with brain anomalies, you know, it's so hard for me to say, oh, yeah, sure, you know, they have a purpose. I mean, you think about the serial killer who's killed 49 women and who's married, you know, and has a wife and 3 kids, and no one knows what he's doing on the weekends. It's kind of hard to imagine that they have a purpose in the world, you know, like, and rationalize it, you know. And I would not want to tell the mother of a murdered daughter that, oh, you know, the psychopath that killed your daughter has a purpose in the world. You know, I wouldn't want to be that person. You know, but in terms of if we're talking about, what can somebody who is unconscious, what can somebody who lives, literally lives in a dark world, what can they teach us about the world? I think that, the people that I coach that have dealt with extreme abuses in their life, they ultimately will eventually, many of them get to a point where they say, if he hadn't been so bad, or if she hadn't cheated on me so many times, or, if she hadn't have humiliated me that time again, or if he hadn't have done this, I would have never, ever, ever really been forced to look at myself and be forced to love myself and let go and realize that I deserve more, so, and I think that, that's awesome that, the dark teaches us about the light, and the darker the room and the darker the experience, the more we appreciate the light. The hungrier we are, the more satisfied we are with whatever meal shows up in front of us.
Yes. Yeah. So in a way, they do have a purpose, like the dark. So those who have the seed of greatness and goodness, that seed can only sprout in contact with the dark.
I think in some cases, I think people who have the seed of greatness within them, I think we all have that potential.
Psychopaths, they don't, right?
Well, psychopaths, if they have a brain anomaly, if that, that's we're talking about it, which is so scary. We're talking about a different person. I mean, someone who's not even human. But I do think, and if we're talking about people who have the seed of greatness within them, and they've also suffered abuse in their life, and they're playing small, or they're toning themselves down, or they're afraid of criticism, or they hear themselves, they have imposter syndrome, like, who am I? Who do I think I am? Who's going to listen to me? I can't do that. I can't go on stage. I can't sing. I can't give that speech. I can't do that. That person who marries somebody with high narcissistic traits, that relationship and ending that relationship, and through all the suffering, because when you're dealing with the narcissist, they use something called word salad, crazy communication, circular conversations. You never get anywhere, right? And so when you finally say, enough is enough, I cannot engage in this any longer, it's like you're finally throwing yourself a life preserver. I think in that situation, the person who has this amazing potential within them, it's that experience, breaking off from the narcissistic relationship, being battered to the point where they have to save themselves. I think that type of darkness can serve someone's light for sure. But there are people who, come from very nurturing homes who have the seed of potential within them. And that's just beautifully nurtured throughout their lifetime because their parents are enlightened or their parents are attuned or they have a wonderful extended family of grandparents and aunts and uncles. So they progress beautifully. But if someone's abused and they're living, a codependent life and they're dealing with somebody who's constantly putting them down, that darkness can get so dark, it forces you to wake up.
But you wouldn't say that is the purpose. What is your idea of God?
It's interesting. My idea of God is, I believe that God is within us. I believe love is the strongest force on earth. I believe that it's a creative, nurturing energy. It's a creative force. So my idea of God is it's creative, it's nurturing, it's expansive, it's about growth, it's just about a spiraling up. God is not about lack. God is about evolution. And I believe that God exists in each of us, and every single person is an individualized aspect of God. And we have come to recognize the God self. And so that's my opinion of God.
Yeah, I like that. Most of us believe that whatever God is the ideal of greatness, of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of hard for me, somebody like me, the way I think, to sort of look at a narcissistic person, a psychopath, as not having God, like not having a piece of God in them. It's really hard for me to do that.
Yeah, I think that this is the thing. I think that if it's important that we psychopaths are all narcissistic, but not all narcissists are psychopaths, right? So if we think about if somebody who has recognized their God self, right, is somebody who's blissful, right? When you recognize that you're enough and you love yourself, it's really hard to love other people. So it's possible that a psychopath represents a human being that is in complete ignorance and denial to their God potential or their God self. A narcissist is somebody who, of course, there is an aspect, of course, they're connected to God, but it's in most cases, their narcissism is related to severe abuse, right? And so this false self is now protecting them from their true self, which is I see as vulnerable and weak, but there is an inner self. There is divinity before the abuse, right? So we have a psychological self, we have a personality self. So the narcissist's problem is not their God self. The problem with the narcissist is their personality self. And if we could heal a narcissist, then that narcissist would be able to embrace this vulnerable side of them without imploding, right? And they'd be able to have compassion for their experiences and heal their shame without imploding. And then they'd be able to get to their innate divine self. And they'd be able to experience peace. They wouldn't have to dominate people, and they would feel one with themselves and integrated. Once you integrate with yourself, then you can integrate with other people.
I like that, Lisa. We all have God in us, all of us. But some of us, for some reason or another, we choose, or maybe we don't choose. We just
No, I don't think we choose.
A psychopath, it's not a choice for them. They are in denial of the God in them, so they can't see it.
That could not be their fault. In other words, if you have a brain anomaly, right, and your brain is wired in such a way that it is not wired towards emotion, right? Remember that the psychopath's brain, on a brain scan, the area of their brain that's responsible for emotions and empathy is underactive, right? So in order for me to feel human towards you, I have to be able to access that area of my brain. Now, does that psychopath have God potential within them? Yes, but their brain or their hardware is not allowing them to access.
Right. Oh, wow. It's like that's an obstacle. There's something that blocks.
Yes.
Why would somebody be born like in a human body but be unable to express God?
Yeah, I think who knows? I mean, see, this is the thing where when we talk about psychiatry, if psychiatry could blend spirituality, if scientists that are looking at brain scans, if they could embrace the metaphysical, I think it would be an easier discussion to have. But, scientists are all about what the brain scan says. And psychiatrists, psychiatrists generally don't look at brain scans, which is kind of hard to imagine. Every other doctor looks at the organ that they're trying to fix, but psychiatrists aren't even looking at the brain. They're listening to what's coming out of a person's mouth. And if you're talking about a narcissist or a psychopath, they're very manipulative.
Right.
I mean, how many clients I've had who have said to me, my wife or my husband sat on the couch with a psychiatrist and manipulated the crap out of them.
Oh, yeah.
And I watched it happen. And so, if we could have a broad conversation and we could, bring, the science into it, and we can understand spirituality, we had an open discussion that was intelligent, it might be easier to have that discussion and come away with answers. I think that people who are spiritual, who are looking for the why, they might be looking for an answer that helps them make sense out of, the world and why things happen. For me personally, I believe that, if someone has a brain issue, then could this have happened, in a generation, 4 or 5 generations back, right? Is that God's fault? That's not God's fault. Could there have been somebody who was abusive, very, very abusive, 3 generations back, and now this abuse has been handed down, and now the generations that come are just desensitized. That part of their brain is no longer active as a defense mechanism. We don't know. But I think that as people who are interested in everything that's metaphysical and spiritual and also scientific, I think that we have to accept certain facts. Like, psychopaths exist. Sociopaths exist, right? What are we going to do as spiritually enlightened human beings? I think that what we have to do is that we have to be very realistic and practical, but also spiritual and loving. So we offer compassion for people who, have these issues, but we don't have lunch with them. We don't invite them into our house where our children are, because we understand they are wired a certain way and they don't have the ability to have empathy, which makes them a threat. This is why there are a lot of people out there kind people, church-going people, who extend their homes to people in need, and they end up being severely butchered or, severely abused by somebody who they were not able to understand was a sociopath or a psychopath.
Yeah, that's great, Lisa. That's really great. The idea of not being naive. We know what's happening. We embrace reality for what is. We understand that. But at the same time, we can find that place in our hearts for compassion. It is the way it is, but I won't make it worse by criticizing, by trying to, label that person bad or calling names. That doesn't help anyone or anything. Yeah, how great. Where can we find more information about you, your work, products, services, your future projects?
Well, I'm merging 2 websites right now. The main website will eventually be www.lisaaromano.com. And I offer, right now we have 2 classes that are actually in progress, online classes. I have the 12-week breakthrough coaching program where, like I said, I bring people through the awakening phase and then the accountability phase and the ascension phase of recovery. And then I have a masterclass that teaches quantum tools that helps people understand the quantum nature of reality and how their emotions and how programming fits into that. And I also engage with people on my membership site. So it's a monthly membership. I give live group calls. They're recorded, and I engage with people live. That's always fun. And they have their own online community, a private community of other people in the class. And that's just a really interesting website where I have a lot of programs that I've created just for the site. And if you're somebody who's disciplined to self-study, that's a really good site to get involved with, because you can log on to the site and you can go to any category and find healing information and homework, journaling prompts, programs, workbooks, and alike. So that's where you can find me. And we're looking to, in the next year or so, we're going to do a bunch of live events, and you can find all that information on my website.
Sounds great.
Sure.
Thank you so much again for your collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Okay, Lisa. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Lisa A. Romano, please visit her website, lisaaromano.com. To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Bickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.